we covered a little bit of the basic shapes, but if you go into some of the user manual documentation stuff, you can see more of the basic shapes, other known as primitive solids, right? So we've got our cube. We already did that. We did a sphere. And then you can also add in resolution, which we'll cover later. But if we just grab it real quick right now, and we go into OpenSCAD to our sphere, and I'm going to just cut those, or delete those, and then do our compiling. Notice that it got a lot smoother. So if I change this down to 10 and do a compile, notice that it's a lot more blocky. So that the higher the number on $FN equaling to, I did 1,000. So this is supposed to be unbelievably smooth, right? Where if you did at 50, it's still relatively smooth, but like at least it's how it's rendered. It's going to look really nice. So the higher the resolution, the better for just, general resolution, and it covers that a little bit there. Another one that we did not cover was cylinder. So I'm just going to copy one of these. And I'm going to paste it down here, comment out the sphere, and go ahead and hit F5. And this is the cylinder that's made, right? So we have the different locations as to what's going on here. So this is diameter 1 and diameter 2. So what that means is the top diameter is diameter 1, so the diameter here, and then the bottom diameter is diameter 2. So if those were the same, what would happen? So if I change this to 40, I'm going to change the height to 50, render it, and there you go. That's another type of cylinder, right? So that's how you would be able to actually change to make it something like this. Okay, well, what if we wanted to add, make this a little bit smaller, like width-wise? So let's make it down to like 10 and 10, still nice and high. Right, but maybe we wanted to add a cube on top, on the very top of it. So let's actually bring this cube back in. And we see that, well, it's kind of over here. Well, let's actually not use that cube anymore. Let's make a new cube. And I'm going to make it the same diameter or same width as the D1. So cube is, I'm going to say 10. And then we reload it. And we see where it's located right there. So we actually want to change where that's located. And to do that, opening up our transformations or a cheat sheet, we have this translate option. So if we do translate, and then we have X, Y, and Z in here of the variables that we can use, and then we put these curly brackets in, we can actually translate the item to a different location. So after I ran compile, this item is now way over here, right? It's not actually near it anymore. And that's because it's going off of X, Y, and Z of this. So if I turned this to 0 and this to 0, and then did F5, well, it changes the Y. So the X and Y axis are just like what you'd think on a piece of paper. X and Y are going to be there. Z is going to be up. So let's make Y 0. And it's going back right where it should be. And if I make Z the same as the height, so 50, and do F5, it moves it right on top. So let me scroll in a little bit. And the way I'm scrolling is just with, I have an Apple mouse, I can scroll just on it. And then also, like if you're on a Windows, I believe the little spin wheel will also scroll in like that. Okay, so now that it's actually moved, I need to move it over a little bit more. So how do I do that? Well, I can use negative values here for translate, right? Not for the cube, but for translate, that's okay. So I'm going to use, let's say, -5 and -5. And there we go. It's right on top. Now, why did it go right on top versus not right on top? Well, it's going to be the half number of the diameter, right? So that's what it's doing, is it's going in the half number of that diameter. And now we have this object here that's actually working. So when you zoom in, it actually zooms in on the center. So this is a, what is this? I don't even know. It's just an object that we've created, but we were able to do it by using translate. So if we put a sphere in here, so let's go ahead and put a sphere in with that same translation. Oops. And well, it overpowers everything because it's so big. The radius was 50. Change the radius down to 10. Well, now it moves it there, right? So that's okay. So let's actually, I'm going to change the cylinder a little bit and make it a lot wider. I'm going to make it 50, 50. So this is going to be a nice and round cylinder. Okay, so now the cylinder is overcoming everything else. So what we need to do now is actually change where the translation happens, which is going to be a little bit higher now just because of the sphere, or at least the sphere would have to be moved up a little bit. So the way that the translation is going to work is going to be based on where the location of a specific object is. Okay, so like that might be a little confusing, but the center of the sphere is actually in the center of it, where the center of the cube is one of the corners of it. So if I get this out of here and translate, I'll do X, Y, and Z again. Paste that in. It's going to be in the same spot. So I ran it in the same spot. Okay. So now I want to bring it into the middle. So let's make Y 0 and X 0. F5. So now it actually is in the middle. Okay. But the middle part of it is, so the center of the circle right here is actually in the middle, but it's intersecting with the cylinder's plane. So we need to move it up more, and that's going to be the radius as to what it is. So the sphere, half of the radius is underneath, half of the radius is up top. So what I want to do is plus 10 to bring it completely out of there. So now it's completely out. And the actual bottom of it, so let me actually just comment out the cube. So the actual bottom of this sphere, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so we can see it a little bit better. The actual bottom is touching right at the very top. And that's because of how we changed the radius. So the radius is now 10, which basically I translated it to the same height as the cylinder, and I moved it up a little bit. So that's actually how we do translation. There's a lot more that you can play around with this on how to do it and make it a little bit nicer, but the point here is that you want to figure out how translation works in the sense that it has to relate to other objects if we eventually want to 3D print this, right? So if I wanted this to be on one of those cubes, and I put, whoops, got to take out both comments, put the cube up. So now I've got that cube there, and the cube is 10. So the cube, the bottom of the cube is 0, 0, right? So the actual bottom of the cube is actually the bottom. Now I want to bring it up. I need to bring this up another 10 to be on top of that cube, because the cube is 10 itself. So the height of the cube is 10. And if I want the sphere to be on top of that, then I'm going to have to change it 10. So now it's just sitting right on top. So the very bottom of that sphere is right there. And it's a little hard to tell, but it's definitely there. So realistically, though, you probably wouldn't have it exactly like that, because you're not going to have a sphere on the tip top of it. If anything, you would have it a little bit closer. Oh, wait, plus not 5, but 15. You'd probably have it something more like this, where it actually intersects with the cube item itself. And of course, a cube can be a rectangle as well. It doesn't have to actually be a perfect cube. All right, so that is some basics with translation. So let me know if you have any questions so far. Otherwise, let's keep going.